Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. We are going to get started here in just a few minutes. We're talking about PFC's post June 18th of 2023. So these are the developments that are affected by House Bill 2071. Okay, and I'm going to share my screen. Let me see. Get it shared here. All right, window. Should be the one. Can y'all see? I think we're good. Awesome. Let's see. I'm gonna wait a couple more minutes to get everybody in. We're glad you're joining us today. As we go through the presentation today, if you have questions, you can enter those in the chat.
Nope,
not the chat.
No,
in the questions box. And we will get to those as we can. We'll take questions. I will pause to take questions as we move through the presentation, but we will also have a whole section at the end when we switch over to talk about questions. So if you want to save them to the end, you can certainly do that. If you want to enter them into the questions box, you can do that as well. So looks like we got around 44 folks. Gonna wait another couple minutes. What time do we usually wait?
I usually start right at 9 and I go through the housekeeping stuff first.
Okay, let's do that. We can go ahead and start with the housekeeping stuff. Are you gonna take us through that?
I can. Hi everybody, this is Kara, and Christina's going to lead the presentation this morning, but I wanted to let you guys know we appreciate you joining us for office hours. Today we're going to talk about public facility corporations that were awarded post June 18th, 2023. We've got Amy Hammond in the questions box, and then I'm going to be putting resources in the chat. You can see on the screen now, we've got our mailing address, physical address, website, and phone numbers. If you need to contact us, the best course of action to start a conversation is going to be through email. We do travel, and sometimes we are, tied up in like office hours, and we can't always answer our phone. But if you send us an email and say, hey, I have a question, please give me a call at your earliest convenience, we'll give you a call. Or if you call us and leave a voicemail, I'm going to put a lot of links that go to that are from that website in the chat that you can use as a resource. And hopefully that helps you guys in your affordable housing journey and PFC journey. The way this is going to work today, if you've been with us for office hours before, we run from 9 to 11:30. At about 10:30, we'll shift gears from the presentation into the open forum office hours where we don't have a formal presentation. We stop the recording and we let you guys just ask any and all of your compliance questions. We have some other folks join us at that point as well. We are going to remain available for questions until 11:30. You will not get a certificate for this morning's webinar, but you will get a thank you for attending email, and that should be sufficient to show that you spent your morning with us. The links that you see on the screen now, I will put in the chat here momentarily, but we've got lots of different resources. We've got forms on the website, manuals and rules, utility allowance information, income and rent limits, compliance presentations, which is where this one will go probably next week if I don't get it done today, and then the contact list for compliance staff. There's also a whole section dedicated to the PFC program, which I will put in the chat next. And that's going to be where you find lots of resources like how to contact the PFC group and different reporting mechanisms that are required. And I think that's it for me. Christina gets to take it from here.
All right, thank you, Kara. All right, everybody, we're going to get started. It's like as mentioned earlier today, we're going to be talking about primarily PFCs that were approved after June 18th of 2023, and these developments will be affected by House Bill 2071. So let's get started. Let's talk about identify the pre-June 18th, 2023 and the post-June 18th, 2023s. So the pre's, those developments were approved prior to House Bill 21, and the post are approved after. You will hear me refer to them as pre and post. So I just wanted to let you know so you don't get, confused as we move through the presentation. We're going to start off with reporting requirements, and those are for the June 1st due dates. So reports are due to the department by June 1st each year. And all PFCs do have to report annually. We do strongly recommend that you report based on the previous calendar year as of December 31st. For example, reports due June 1st of 2025 should reflect the reporting year of 2024, right? So, and this consistency will help everyone be clear on what exactly your documents will be consisting of. All right. There are two very important entities in the reporting process, the PFC user and the auditor. And both of them have distinct responsibilities. So the PFC user, and I'm going to define it, which is a public or private partnership entity, developer, or other private entity that has ownership interest or leasehold or other possessory interest in a multifamily public facility development. This definition is very long, but it's available in the rule, and I do highly recommend that you go through the rule and read those definitions. They will help you differentiate between what a user is, what the sponsor is, and so forth. So the user is also must engage a qualified auditor to conduct the audit report. And they also must provide this auditor with all the relevant information and access to tenant files necessary to conduct and complete the audit report. The auditor is an individual who is an independent auditor or compliance expert with an established history of providing similar audits in housing compliance matters. Auditors must hold a certified occupancy specialist or COS or equivalent designation. Auditors cannot be a current or previous management agent that has oversight of the development or is or was responsible for reviewing and approving tenant files. All right, we're going to continue on with some reporting requirements. Okay, so one of the most frequent questions that we receive is, when is the first report due for my development? And we're going to talk about that in detail right now. So for acquisitions, your first report is due by June 1st of the year following the first anniversary of the date of the PFC acquisition. And I'm going to go into an example of this, so don't fret. For newly constructed developments, it's similar. So the first report is due June 1st of the year following the first anniversary of the date the PFC first becomes occupied by one or more tenants. So let's jump into an example right now. Okay, so for example, it's the PFC acquisition's first audit report is due. So the PFC development was acquired on August 1st of 2024. Right, so the first anniversary date would be August 1st, 2025. That would be your first anniversary. The date after the first anniversary would be June 1st, 2026, and that is when your audit report is due. If that doesn't make sense to you, or if you have more questions, please enter a question into the box, and we can talk about that a little bit later. We're also going to jump into one additional. Go ahead, Amy.
Please note that the handout they have
yes.
2025 on it.
I fixed it,
Okay.
and the handouts and the materials that you have in your go-to are correct.
Okay.
I corrected them this morning.
Okay. The older handout had the wrong date on it. Somebody reached out to us who previewed the handout and let us know. We appreciate that.
Yes.
Thank you.
So we've got it corrected, and you'll have the correct dates on the handout and in the presentation. Thank you so much, everyone involved in that correction. And so, did I go? Okay. So the next example is for a new construction. So the first tenant occupies the unit on November 5th of 2024. So November 5th, 2025 would be the anniversary date, right, of that occupant occupying the dwelling or the development. And so your audit report would be due June 1st, 2026. Okay. I hope that is helping everyone. Okay, we're going to move on. All right. So let's talk a little bit about what your audit report happens when it gets to us. What happens with it, where it goes, what's the timeline process of that. So audit reports, once you submit them via email through that PFC inbox, if you don't have the inbox, please, or the email address, please take it down, screenshot it, write it down. That is how we are receiving audit reports currently. Okay, if that ever changes, you will be notified. Don't worry. So after we receive your audit report, within 45 days of that submission, the department will issue a monitoring report to both the PFC user and the auditor. Okay. Within 60 days of that submission, the department will post the monitoring report on the department website and issue a monitoring report to all responsible parties listed in the report. As you auditors know, if you've looked through the workbook, there is a long section that you have to fill out that has a list of responsible parties. Everyone that you list in that responsible parties tab is going to get this report. All right. And as we continue on, there we go. So the monitoring report after that 60 days is issued to the responsible parties. If there is corrective action required, you will have a 60-day correction action period to submit that to the department. Okay. If non-compliance remains uncorrected after your corrective action period, all uncorrected noncompliance is issued to the comptroller and the county appraisal district where the PFC is located with a recommendation of loss of tax exemption. Right. If all noncompliance issues are corrected within the 60-day corrective action period, the PFC user and auditor are issued a closeout letter. All notices will be posted to the department's website. All right, so we're going to jump into the audit requirements, which is the bulk of this presentation, right? So keep in mind, we are talking about developments that are post June 18, 2023. So the development must have a properly recorded regulatory agreement with initial term of 10, with initial minimum 10-year term. You also the auditor also must be using the department's audit workbook and be providing, and the development should be providing original records to the auditor. On the department website, there is also the income certification worksheet or the TIC that you should be utilizing. If you do not know where to access that information, it is on our website. We can put it in the chat so you can know where to find these forms that you must be using. Right. The file sample size that the auditor is using, that should be 20% of the total number of your restricted units for the development, but no more than 50 household files. The sample should also consist mostly of new move-ins and also include at least 10% of recertified files. So to the right is a example of what this looks like. So if this development has 240 units, and 162 of those units are restricted under the regulatory agreement. 20% of 162 is 32.4, which means you're rounding up. We're always rounding up. So that's 33 files, and 33 is under 50, which is good. So your sample size should be a total of 33 restricted units. 10% of 33 is 3.3, and we're rounding up to 4. 4 of those 33 should be recertified files. All right. Regulatory agreement, as I previously stated, must be recorded. This is a requirement. Okay. And it must have a minimum term of 10 years. Minimum. For new construction developments, at least 10% of the units must be reserved for occupied by households at or below 60% AMI. This is adjusted for household size. It's very important. At least an additional 40% of the units at the development must be reserved for occupied by households at or below 80%. This is also adjusted for household size. All right. Occupied developments in this acquisition tab or graphic. At least 25% of the units are reserved for or occupied by households below 60% AMI, also adjusted for household size. And at least an additional 40% of the units are reserved for and occupied by households at or below 80%, also adjusted for household size. The percentage of restricted units in each unit type in the development must be the same or greater percentage as the unrestricted unit percentage of each unit type. A lot of these developments have unit types, all kinds of unit types. I've seen a lot of different things, but just understand that the percentage of your restricted units in each unit type that you have at your development must be the same or greater. This is a requirement. We are going to be looking for this specifically, all of these things. Okay. Acquired developments must calculate the annual savings to households living in restricted units when compared to the annual rental income that would have been collected on those restricted units if they were charged market rate. This specifically for the developments, if you have specific questions about this, you can certainly reach out, but I want you to talk to your auditor about this. If you have questions specifically about what this looks like for you, you need to talk to your auditor about this question. Not question, but about this requirement. They're going to be able to give you a much more in-depth view of what this looks like for you because they have all your documents right in front of them. So definitely talk to your auditors about this. Also, the total savings for rent restricted households must be no less than 60% of the estimated amount of the annual ad valorem taxes that would be imposed on the development. Also, developments, talk to your auditor about this requirement. Okay. All right. Each residential lease agreement for a restricted unit must provide the following. I'll say that again. Each residential lease agreement for a restricted unit must provide the following. Every unit lease has to have this. Okay. The landlord may not retaliate against the tenant or the tenant's guests by taking action because the tenant attempted to establish, or participated in a tenant organization. The landlord may only choose to not renew the lease if the tenant is in material noncompliance with the lease. And to non-renew a lease, the landlord must provide at minimum, a 30-day written notice of non-renewal to the tenant. Okay. Tenants may not waive these protections in a lease or lease addendum. So again, we are looking very specifically that all of these things are in the actual lease. Okay. All right. So, the PFC websites must include information about the development and its compliance with Section 303.0425 of the Texas Local Government Code, along with its policies on the acceptance of the Housing Choice Voucher holders. Excuse me. The development must affirmatively market to households participating in the Housing Choice Voucher program and local housing authorities. Public facility users cannot refuse to rent to an individual or family solely because the individual or family participates in a Housing Choice Voucher program. Okay. And the public facility user cannot require a minimum income standard for families participating in a Housing Choice Voucher program that exceeds 250% of the tenant portion of rent. Again, developments, if you have specific questions about these requirements for your website, for affirmatively marketing, reach out to your auditors. They can provide you some more guidance here. And certainly, of course, you can always reach out to us as well. But that first stop with your auditor, we highly recommend that because they're, like I said, they know your documents that you have already. They have your regulatory agreement. They have been, looking at these rules and requirements, and they can provide you with some additional guidance here. All right. Occupants of restricted units are required to recertify at the time of the renewal of a lease agreement. The income of the household using a department-approved income certification form, and the department-approved income certification form is on our website. If a household exceeds the income limit at an annual income recertification, the operator should follow the available unit rule as outlined in Section 42G2D of the Internal Revenue Code. If you are not familiar with the available unit rule, you should get familiar with the available unit rule. Okay.
And Christina, just one thing, we did do an office hours on following the available unit rule.
Okay.
So it is in the presentations. Kara will put a link in the chat. So people that aren't familiar with this rule, because it is a tax credit specific rule, they can watch that presentation or they can reach out to us and I'm happy to go through that rule with them.
Awesome.
Putting the link in now.
Thank you. Awesome. Okay. Lots of audit requirements, folks. Let us know if you have questions. We like questions. We understand that this is very new for a lot of you, so don't hesitate to ask a question if you have one. All right, so next we're about to jump into income and rent requirements. All right. Monthly rent for restrictive units may not exceed 30% of the imputed household income limitation for the unit. This is adjusted for an imputed family size of one person plus one bed per bedroom plus one person, excuse me. Notwithstanding the foregoing, if a restricted unit is occupied by a household with a housing choice voucher and the payment standard for that voucher is less than the monthly rent for the restricted unit established pursuant to the immediately preceding sentence, the household may be required to pay the difference between the payment standard and the monthly rent. Annual income shall be determined consistent with the Section 8 program. Income and rent limits will be derived from HUD, and income and rent limits within the regulatory agreement will be used. Okay. All right. We're moving right along. We're going into the workbook. We have made some changes to the workbook. We've learned some things coming from June 1st of 2024. We went through our first audit season. It was great. It's wonderful. And because we've learned a lot of things, we have adjusted some things inside the workbook. So we're going to look at the workbook specifically, and these changes have been made. They are available on our website for the workbook. So all of these changes have already been implemented. Okay. All right. This is, oh, go ahead.
Christina, we're going to have some questions
Okay, let's
before
go.
we do it. This is a good one for you. One of the most common questions we get from owners is regarding income determination. The regulatory agreement outlines acceptable forms of verification for income. Do we need to implement HTC HUD Section 8 rules for determining and verifying income, or can we just do what is required in the reg? And I guess I'll jump in.
Mhm.
There's two questions here in one, and I think that's where sometimes it gets confused, and you might agree, Christina, with PFCs.
Yes.
A lot of times the regulatory agreement has requirements for verification,
Mhm.
and you should always follow the regulatory agreement for the requirements for verification. However, calculation of eligibility
Mhm.
should be under HOTMA and the Section 8 CFR 5.
24 CFR
5609. That is how, so it's two different things. Verification, follow what is in your regulatory agreement. Calculation, follow HOTMA and 24 CFR 5609.
Yes.
That's what I keep hearing,
Yes.
guys. This is my party trick.
Yes. And I want to remind everyone that we are talking about post June 18th, 2023 developments here. These are developments that are, they have to comply with House Bill 2071. So they're going to function a little different than the pre's. So Amy is 100% correct. That is what you need to be doing. You need to be verifying based on your regulatory agreement and calculating based on the actual rule. I think that was a great question. Whoever asked that. Any more? Do you have any more questions, Amy?
No, I think we are good.
We're good? Awesome. Okay. So we're going to jump into the workbook here. And on your screen, you'll see this is what this is like a screenshot of what the website looks like and where the audit workbook lives. So you see the PFC monitoring regulations, which will take you to the House Bill 2071. If you want to read the bill, I absolutely recommend it. It's a great read. And then below the monitoring regulations, we have the forms. That is where the income certification form is, the pre-workbook, the post-workbook, and then how to obtain the lat long. So definitely, this is where you need to be obtaining your PFC forms from. Move on. Okay. So on the audit workbook, tab 1 is development information. So this is where we're going to ask you to, or not ask, but you need to input the property information. And this is the development name, the development address, the county, the phone number, email addresses. Email addresses are extremely important. If you can tell, we really need emails. Emails are required. So it is very important that we be able to communicate with the development, with the operator, the user, the sponsor, the management company. All of these entities have to be notified of this audit report. So we need to be able to get in touch with them. Auditors, make sure you are putting email addresses in here. All right. Also in tab 1, we have operator information and the management company information on the bottom. So what I want to say about operator information and management company information, typically these are not the same. What I mean by that is the operator of the development is the owner of the development. This is the owner of the development. If the management company owns this development, by all means, I would understand if these two sections are filled out with the same contact information. If the management company does not own this development, then we need the owner's information, which would be different from the management company's information. If you have questions about this, please reach out. Okay, wonderful. Let's move on to tab 2, which is the responsible parties. This is also a extremely important tab. At the top of tab 2 is where you're going to see the PFC sponsor information. The PFC sponsor is the entity that created the PFC. This is the municipality, county, or the housing authority. If you have entered a company into this section, that is wrong. Just a heads up. Below the PFC sponsor's name is you're going to have a governing board. Okay, that's going to be board members. And yes, board members will be contacted and provided with these monitoring reports. It is required that we do so. So their information needs to be in here. Their name, addresses, phone numbers, and emails are required. We have to note it's part of the law, it's part of the rule. So those that information needs to be filled out.
Christina?
Yes.
We did get a question earlier and I answered it, and I hope you would agree, so I just want to make sure. If the land use restriction agreement, or the regulatory agreement, I guess we have to get used to saying different things, the regulatory agreement lists attorneys that should be, the regulatory agreement says these attorneys should be notified. We would want that here. It's
Yes.
not really a governing body,
Yes.
but since the regulatory agreement requires them to be notified, this is where you would want to
Absolutely,
see that.
agreed. I would definitely consider them a responsible party, and I would list that information here. If it is an attorney and not a governing board, like if it's not a board member, and I would ask that you specify that, like, you know, maybe beside their name, if you want to put in parentheses, this is the attorney listed on the regulatory agreement, or so forth. The more information that you can give me, the better, because I don't know what I don't know, and I'm not looking at these documents with you. So the most information that you can provide me, the better.
And then we have another question about this. Some housing authorities only have a single point of contact. Is that allowed?
So yes, so we can have a single point of contact for them. And honestly, some of them got a lot of letters, you guys. They got a lot of letters from us. And they have, want to streamline that point of contact. If that housing authority has specifically requested that, I'm going to ask you to provide proof of that to me, at least the first time.
All right. I think that is it for
Awesome.
now. I mean, there's another question, but it has to do with corrective action, so I kind of want to hold off on that.
Okay, awesome.
So we will answer your questions, Tamika. I'm just waiting until we get there.
Awesome. Okay, let's move on to tab 3. Okie dokie. Tab 3 is the auditor's information. This is pretty straightforward. You're the auditor. You're the auditor. You're filling this workbook out. So please make sure all your information is listed here. The company, your name, address, phone number, email, your website if you have one, and emails required. All right, tab 4. This is some additional development information that is very important. At the top there, it's going to ask you about the regulatory agreement effective date, which is typically on the first page of the regulatory agreement. Make sure you're filling that out. Is this a new construction, acquisition, a rehabilitation, or a reconstruction? Make sure you're checking the correct box there. And then it asks you some additional questions on if it's a new construction, what was the date that it was first occupied? As you know, that is a very important thing. It governs when your first audit report is due, which we talked about earlier. For acquisition, we have when was the development originally built and what is the date of the acquisition by the PFC. So let's talk about what the date of the acquisition by the PFC is. What I'm looking for here is your regulatory agreement date, typically. That's the date that your development is turning into a PFC if it's an acquisition. So that's what would go here. Then we have if a type of development that you have, general, family, elderly, other, explain, and then if your development participates in other affordable housing programs. And so what I want to say to this is, if your development participates in other affordable housing programs, development, talk to your auditor about this, because depending on what you're layered with can depend if you need to be reporting or not. And if you don't need to be reporting, we don't want you to have to report. So definitely have that conversation be at the beginning of a conversation with your auditor. If you want to reach out to us and be like, hey, my development is layered with all these programs, we will certainly answer those questions and let you know what you need to be doing. All right, so tab 5, utilities. This is informational only. We do want this information. We would like to track this information for each development. So even though it is informational only, yes, we do want this filled out. Okay, so what utilities are the residents paying for, and what utilities does the operator pay? And then tab 6 has to do with fees. This is also informational only tab. We're asking you to fill this information out about application fees, security deposits, additional deposits that that you may have, pet, key fobs, applications, conditions of occupancy like pest control, trash, cable, optional fees, washer and dryers, month to month, those type of things. So please make sure that you're filling this section out. And like I said before, even though it's informational only, it's information that we need to know. All right, tab 7, unit and occupancy. So we overhauled this tab quite a bit from last year. And there's a lot of reasons why, as you know, all developments are different. And you may not know, your auditors do. Your auditors definitely know that these developments have different unit mixes, unit types. They use different designations to differentiate from this unit to that unit. It runs the absolute gamut. So this section, we added a lot of we added a lot more places that you can put your information in here. So identify, and also unit mixes are extremely important, because a lot of your regulatory agreements state that you have to have a specific unit mix. And of course, the rule says that you have to have a unit mix as well, or a percentage of that unit mix. So you need to make sure that you're filling this information out to the best of your ability to fill it out. So also we're identifying the difference in rent charge from income restricted residential units and the estimated maximum market rents that could be charged for those units without the rent or income restrictions. So if you have 100% restricted development, it's a thing. We've seen those. So your development doesn't have max market rents to base those off of. There is your auditor can use a methodology or give us a methodology to come up with what their market rent could be or could look like. We just need to know what that methodology is, whatever that they use to come up with those figures. You can enter that information somewhere on this tab. You can enter that information into the cover letter, is where I would specifically, personally would like to see that isolated. But as long as it's somewhere, I'm not going to be too picky. Also, we're going to be looking at the occupancy information here down towards the bottom. You're going to fill out the new construction and acquisition set asides here, and then your rent savings calculations as well. This is a stacked tab. It really is. It's very important that all of this information is filled out entirely. If you have questions about this, definitely throw it in the questions box. We can certainly talk about more about unit mixes and rent saving calculations when we switch over as well. Right. Tab 8. Tab 8 is the LURA regulatory agreement limits. I've seen just about everything. LURAs, ground leases, regulatory agreements, partnership agreements, all types of agreements. Whatever agreement you have, your development has. And if you have multiple agreements, we need all of those as well. Not just one, I need all of them. All right, so in this tab, we're talking about marketing, because post developments do have a marketing requirement. All post developments have a marketing requirement. So you're going to enter that information into this tab. Your regulatory agreement information, LURA information, ground lease, all those things goes in here. Your rent limits, your income and rent limits. And then on the bottom, I know it's kind of hard to see. It may be kind of hard to see. Oh, but it asks you, oh, I'm messing things up. It's going to ask you some additional questions on the bottom. Like if there's some additional things that your regulatory agreement requires that's not in the rule that you have complied with or not complied with, the auditor can fill out that in this section. And I want to speak more to that. So for post developments, you have to comply with the rule with House Bill 2071, and you have to comply with your regulatory agreement. If your regulatory agreement is requiring you to do something that the rule doesn't require you to do, you have to comply with your regulatory agreement as well. And your auditor is going to be looking for those things. And those things will be filled out here in this section. I don't know what they are until I get your information. So definitely have those conversations with your auditor about the additional things that you need to be complying with in your regulatory agreement that aren't necessarily picked up in the rule. Okay. Tab 9. Tab 9 is where you will, the auditor will enter the sample information, so your household file check sheet. This must include the sample size. Uh-oh. Can you also hear me? Because my mic, I think my mic did something. Oh, I don't know. It gave me an alert. Anyway, so I'll continue. So in this tab, you will be entering your sample size, which is 20% of the total number of restricted units for the development, but no more than 50 household files. All of that information is going to be housed in this tab. The selection of restricted units should primarily be, like we talked about earlier, new move-ins. And then a 10% of that sample size should be recertifications. I am going to be looking at this and making sure that you're complying. If you give me a sample size that's mostly recertifications, that is not compliant. So just make sure that they're mostly new move-ins and 10% of your sample size is recertified files. All right.
Christina, can
Yeah.
I just point out there too that that is one of another how we determine if they're recertified files or not. That is why we added that at the beginning of the new audit workbook, where the auditor is telling us what date they're auditing through,
Yes.
so that we can say, okay, you audited through this date, so we're not going to be saying we're looking for recertifications after that date, right? We're looking for
this year.
Yeah. So that's why we added that date to the beginning of the audit workbook.
Yes.
So the auditor can tell us, like, what is the date? We'd say, you should be probably auditing for the prior year, but maybe you're auditing for a different year. There's no really rule that says what date to audit through. So you're going to tell us what audit date. Is it 12/31 or is it 5/20? Is it 1/1? What is it? What are you auditing through? So that is why we added that, so that we can look at this and make reasonable determination about the 10% of the recertification requirement.
Absolutely. And that's so important. Thank you, Amy, for bringing that up. And I don't think you could see it on, like when we put the screenshots in of the workbook, when we built this presentation, I don't think we had that in there yet. I think we changed it after. But the workbook, at the top of the tab 1 of the workbook, there is a section that states what time period are your files coming from. And that it's so important because, like Amy said, we're not going to know if it's a recert or a new move-in if we don't know what period that you're pulling files from. And yes, she's absolutely correct. There's not a specific date. We're recommending that you pull from the previous year, right? January 1st through December 31st of 2024 should be the files that you're pulling from for the audit that's due on June 1st, 2025. It's simple, it's clean, it makes sense. It's not a rule, it's a recommendation. So if you want to deviate from that, you can technically, but you need to let us know what exactly the time frame that you're working from so that we're all on the same page. Let's see. So your audit submission, a completed submission would look like this. So it would consist of the complete audit workbook, the development regulatory agreement, and any other agreement that your development has. If your development has a regulatory agreement and a ground lease, I need both of those. If it has a regulatory agreement, a ground lease, and a sublease agreement with another something else, yes, I need that too. So if you have questions about that, please reach out to me directly. But just understand that if you've got multiple agreements in place, that all of them we need to have a copy of all of those. We would love a cover letter to accompany your audit report. And I got a question recently about what do we want to see in a cover letter, and I don't have a specific template or anything like that, but we would like to see just a broad overview of the audit. So number one, what date this actual audit occurred. What date did you audit this development? That's pretty important. We'd like to have that date. Uh, the time frame that you're pulling files from, is it January 1st to just through December 31st? Was it the end of January through another date? Like we need to know that information. If you want to put, like, if there's observations that you want to draw specific attention to, you can put them in the cover letter. I've seen that. If you had to use a different methodology for something, um, we would like to see that in the cover letter as well. I think that is a really good place for you to put it. So a cover letter will be great. And then also the auditor's certification. So if, as an auditor, if you've submitted an audit report before and you attached your certification to that, I'm not going to make you do that over and over and over again.
Unless it's expired.
Unless it's expired. So we do have, a list of the auditors that we have, the audit reports have been submitted by. We do keep that list. We do keep a copy of your certifications. So if we already have it and it's not expired, you do not need to submit another certificate. If you're a new auditor, you haven't submitted before, then yes, at least your first audit report would need to have the certification accompanied. All right, and that's the end of the actual presentation. And we
do have some questions.
Okay, so let's go through some questions.
Okay, so Christina, who is responsible for submitting the corrections to any non-compliance findings? Is it the owner? Is it the auditor? Is it the site staff that's working on the files? Or is it any of the above?
So technically, it is the responsibility of the user to submit any non-compliance corrections. Does it have to just be the user? No, it doesn't have to just be the user. It really just is going to depend on the agreement that the owner of the development has with their auditor or has with their management company, or whoever else is, they're working with. So it doesn't have to come from the user, meaning the user has to email me corrections directly. That is not the case. I'm just saying that the responsibility per the rule, per the law, is of the user. Okay, it's their responsibility to make sure that those corrections are submitted. Now, who actually submits them? If y'all have worked out that the auditor is going to be submitting corrections, that's totally fine. We don't have any problems with that, or the management company, or so on and so forth. But responsibility wise, it is the users. Yes.
Okay. And we have another question. Do required fees, such as amenity fees, need to be factored into the residence rent, the max rent?
No. No, I need to know your base rent. I need to know what your base rent is. There's no cap on fees or anything like that, but I'm looking at the base rent amount. That's what I'm looking for.
No, the tenant's portion of rent, not including fees.
Not including fees.
Because fees are not well, they're not factored into rent as of right now.
Right.
Remember, we are in legislative session and anything could happen with
Yes.
PFCs from there. And so that catches us up on questions. Please feel free to send some more in. But while we're waiting for any possible additional questions, I think this would be a great time to introduce, because we didn't get to.
We didn't.
We,
We didn't.
the last PFC thing we did, she wasn't with us
I
yet.
know.
And
She was there, but not
now
there.
she is here. We now have another public facility corporation monitor. Her name is Shay Erickson, or not? Yes,
Yeah,
Shay
yeah,
Erickson.
Shay Erickson, yeah.
I'm just gonna mess up her name already. Shay Erickson. We are happy to have her as part of our team.
Yes.
So you may be hearing from Shay,
Mhm.
not just Christina
Mhm.
and me and Wendy. So we are happy. I don't know if she's on right now.
I think she's on, but I don't think she's on
I
camera.
am.
Here
Be
in
on
spirit.
camera, Shay. If you want to just pop in and say hi and unmute.
The good news, I did put you on blast because I copied you on the email when I sent the handout yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody has your email now.
That's right. Yep, we're out here in the world.
You were-
So yes,
Thank you.
you will definitely be seeing Shay and hearing from Shay. We are in PFC world every day, all day. So if you want to reach out to her for anything, you absolutely can do so. As Kara just said, her email address was included in the blast that went out yesterday. So now you have both of our contact informations. Also, too, if you are reaching out to the PFC inbox, you might be getting replies from either me or Shay or Amy or Wendy. So also you can reach either of us in the PFC inbox as well. So yes, we're
And
super excited.
If you email me, I'm happy to forward your email on, but I don't know the answer to your question, so I'm gonna forward it. So please don't think I'm being ugly when I forward that on. I just am not qualified to answer your PFC questions, so.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's a lot of
Too many
nuances
nuances.
that are very
Too many
different from our other
nuances for me.
programs. Yes. So that we have a question that came in that says, fees are not factored into rent even if they're required. And that is true. And the example was concierge trash. It is a mandatory fee on top of rent. Should it be included? It should be included in that fee tab. You should say that. But when you're reporting the tenant rent on tab 9, you should not include it in that one. So you should include it in the fee tab so we do know that you are charging. And remember, this is for informational purposes only, and we do appreciate it being filled out. We do get lots of questions, especially during legislative session and stuff like that about fees. We get questions from lots of legislators. We get questions from executive, from the governor's office, all regarding PFCs and what is being charged and all that stuff. So it is something that is great for us to be able to say, we don't know. But we can say from the information that we have gathered, which is just, there's no rule about fees. So you're welcome to charge it. But when you report it to us, please kind of separate that out so that we don't think that you are overcharging rent.
Yes, and that's so important, you guys, because we're looking at rent amounts to make sure that you're not charging over the rent amount, and it's important to know and make sure that when you're reporting the rent amount to us, you're not including fees in that rent amount.
Yes, so this kind of sums up. She's like, so she said, thank you. Should the fees plus the rent be below the limit? No, only the rent has to be below the limit. So you can have these fees on top of it as of right now. As of right now, there is nothing in the rule or the law that says that you cannot charge these fees. It just says the rent. So that's why we need it reported separately. We don't want to write up a finding of overcharging rent, and then we're going to end up having to drop that finding if it comes back, and you can show us documentation that the rent actually is only so much, and then this was this trash fee on top of it. So if they're separated out in the audit workbook, we know that there's a fee, but we also can see on tab 9 just what the tenant rent is. What
Absolutely.
is on their lease agreement as their rent before any fees.
Right. And we don't want to write you a finding if you're not.
In non-compliance.
If you're not in non-compliance, we don't want to write you a finding, right? And the thing is, it's like these reports are put on the website, and I'm telling you now, people are looking. People are looking at the reports, okay, very closely. So
Tenants.
yeah, tenants
We had
are
a tenant
looking at
reach
your.
out to
We
us.
did. We have tenants reaching out to you about your reports.
Tenants are that savvy.
They
Right.
have.
They
So
reached out and told us you did not
They did.
correct the
they
non-compliance.
did. They are. It's really interesting. So we don't want to write you findings if you're not in non-compliance. So please make sure that you're giving us as much information as you can so we can make sure that the information is correct. And this is one of those things that I've seen come through a lot is the rent amounts including fees, and then you get a finding, but it was it just, we don't want that to happen. And these reports are on the website, and um, revising a report or dropping in and then it getting back on we're talking about a 60-day plus a 45-day timeline that report could be up. So please make sure that when you're giving us the rent amount, that it is not including any fees.
So just to clarify, originally we were told we could use either the income cert in the regulatory agreement or the one provided by your team is now required that the income be issued by the department. This requirement is for post.
Yes.
Pre House Bill 2071, you would use what is in your regulatory agreement or our income cert. You're welcome to use it.
Yep.
We don't care. But post, it is in our rule that you will use our income certification.
Yes, you will use it. And if you have questions about it, please reach out and let us know.
We do think that it probably needs some updates.
Yes, we are looking into getting that updated and maybe even like having instruction thing to go along with it or something like that helps you use it. So definitely let us know feedback about the income certification. But yes, to mirror exactly what Amy just said. You need to be using what's in your regulatory agreement. If your regulatory agreement has guidance on that, you need to be following that guidance. Post, you have to use the form on the website, on our website.
Okay, so we have the next one. Okay, we have the next question that has multiple parts.
Okay.
And she starts by saying that she apologizes for the questions because she's new to the program. First of all, never apologize for questions. We love answering questions because that means you're going to do it right if you answer the question.
And welcome.
Yes. So, number one, there's a couple of questions here. Requirement for renter's insurance. Is this restricted on this program or are we good to require? You are good to require. There is no restriction on this program. So you are good for that. Again, if it is a fee you are charging, so say they don't have renter's insurance, which Kara and I see this sometimes when we're out in our other programs, and you say, okay, my son actually has this at his student housing. If he does not have renter's insurance, then he is automatically charged, I think it's $15 a month to be part of their renter insurance program. So if it is a fee like that, please make sure it is put on the fee tab, and then just the rent is put on the tab 9, but no, it is allowable. The second question is, I'm assuming all occupant income is considered in the household. Yes. Does this include anyone in the home or only 18 plus? Everybody in the home. So again, just like we've said a little bit earlier, sometimes your verifications might be specific for your regulatory agreement, but the actual calculation of income is going to be just like any other affordable housing program administered by the department. The third one was for the required language in the lease. Can this be in a special provision or a community handbook? It can be in the lease or lease addenda, but it cannot be a community handbook or special provision or tenant selection plan. It has to be in the lease or a lease addenda.
Right.
Something that is a legal document that is part of the lease contract.
Yep.
If the market rent amounts are actually at or lower than the rent limits for the new construction, we do not need to factor in the meaningful savings, correct? I think that one, I always have to look at that up. That's for acquisition, right?
It is for, I think it is for acquisition. Oh, I think it's for
I always have to
both.
look that one. As long as the rates are less than the rent limits, there does not need to be a savings over market. Well, that makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
But we would need to know that.
Yeah,
right?
we
But
do need to
yeah,
know.
Again, that's a great thing that you would put in your cover letter and then also on your rents tab.
Yep.
So that we understand that. So
Because
I understand what you're saying.
if there's
yeah.
not a savings, we need to know that there's not a savings.
Yeah, we need to know why. Yeah. But that makes sense. It does make sense. And then a question came in Kara's email.
Yes.
Oh.
So we just announced our Lunch and Learn series. That listserv just went out, and somebody wrote me back and said, will this series pertain to PFC units and properties, or is it more for tax credit? The Lunch and Learn series is the income determination training that covers all department programs and is broken down into chunks because that's what the people wanted. So that is what I'm doing. I'm very excited about it. But yes, it is going to even be applicable to you calculating income for your PFC programs.
Yep, it is how all affordable housing programs are calculated. And I don't remember if you go into any really form specific stuff in there, or you just kept it really calculations.
This one is going to have some form specific information in it, but I try to preface that with, if you don't have I have a slide that has all of our programs, and I try to say if it's not one of these 7 programs, please be aware that you may have additional forms that you know.
Yeah, just remember like the income cert or something like that. Oh, I just got kicked out.
Oh no.
Uh-oh.
I'll come back in. Hold on.
Should be back. Let's see. Also, I want to talk a little bit more about tab 9. I get a lot of questions about tab 9, the household file check sheet. We made a lot of changes to this tab. We had meetings with auditors after the first audit round to see, what their experience was looking at the development files and how could this workbook be easier to use for them, because that's what auditors are filling this particular workbook out. What information would be helpful for them to be able to report here, observations, all of those things. So we did add a couple of different spaces in tab 9 to account for verification, file supported income, and I want to make sure that all of the auditors know that these tabs are there to help them report what they're actually seeing in the files and relaying that information to us. Because when I'm going through, when we're going through this section, I don't know what I don't know. I don't know if I've said that a bunch of times today, but I'm not looking at the actual file. It's not right in front of me. So a lot of times, I'm having to guess on what exactly documentation was in the file or what documentation was not in the file. And like the regulatory agreements, a lot of them do specify those specific documents that they have to verify income with. And that's why we added those additional slots into this particular tab. Like your verification based on what the regulatory agreement is asking you to collect, and then the income based on what the actual rule says that you have to be calculating by. So that's the reason why there's a couple of different windows in here for you to report on what income that you're seeing into the file. Also, please make sure as the auditors are using that observations tab, we took the findings tab out, or we just renamed it to observations. And the reason we did that is because we want to know more than just what you're seeing that might not comply with the rule. We want to, what are you looking at? What are you noticing about this file? So you can report the information that you're not seeing, the information that you are seeing, trends that you're seeing. All of those things together is kind of what we why we rehauled this tab, and meeting with different auditors and getting their take on it and what worked for them and what didn't work for them is kind of how we came up with the changes that we made to tab 9.
Look, I'm on
Are you back?
Kara's, my internet went down, so I'm on Kara's computer. So when was the PFC income cert implemented? We implemented that at the same time as our rule when we set our forms out. So
Yep.
again, if you are pre, you're going to follow what's in your land use restriction agreement. If you are post, you are going to use our income cert, which is on the PFC. Don't
Yes.
use the one for our other programs. There's a specific one for PFC.
Yes, there
and
is.
again, we do know that it probably needs some tweaks and updates, and we're going to do that with some instructions.
Definitely.
The next question I have is, does income from separate spouses need to be included in the income? Meaning, do we include the income from a spouse that will not be living in the household? Again, that depends. Where is this other spouse? There are rules to this. Kara's Lunch and Learn talks about these when you have an absent household member, what that looks like. Sometimes if they're in a nursing facility, you're going to treat that different than if they are incarcerated. So really it just depends on the situation. So again, the Lunch and Learn will be a great place for that. The affordable housing addenda from TAA is not going to be the addenda that is going to capture all of the things that are required through the PFC. I don't believe it has all of those requirements. And so you would need an addenda that has all of those requirements. If it does, I might be wrong, but
It doesn't.
I have to go back through. Okay, it doesn't. Christina is confirming it does not.
Yeah, so, and what I've seen developments do is some of them have just added their own addenda, have created their own. Typically, that's what most of them do, which is fine, and you can do that. But yes, definitely the one for TAA does not comply with the additional things that need to be in there.
Okay,
Great question.
Couple more questions. Follow up to the spouse question. Does this apply to pre and post? Yes, everybody calculates income the same. Again, verifications may be different, but the calculations for both pre and post should remain the same. The only thing that I've seen different, Christina, and tell me if you've seen anything else that might be different. The only thing that I've noticed have been different as far as calculations would be the number of pay stubs.
Yes.
So some of them are very specific to the number of pay stubs, where HOTMA says only 2. Some of those regulatory agreements say more.
Yeah, you really have to get pretty intimate with your regulatory agreement for pre. I mean, it's for post as well, right? But definitely go through that thing with a fine-tooth comb. because I am, sets up, I will be as well, reading everyone's regulatory agreement to make sure that you're complying. Um, and to make sure that you are, verifying income with the appropriate amount of documentation, which is another reason why we added those additional observation fields in tab 9, which I was just talking about. We were very strategic and intentional about that because we do know that all these regulatory agreements are all over the place for pre's, and they may be for posts. I guess we'll find out. I don't know. We'll see. Um, but we just need to be able to pinpoint and confirm if you're collecting the appropriate amount of pay stubs, appropriate amount of documentation to be in compliance with your regulatory agreement and with the rule. I think, trying to think of some.
There was a lunch and learn question, Kara.
They wanted to know if the Lunch and Learn series was announced through our email system where we announce everything else, and it was. And it went out with the June 11th, June 19th, June 26th, and July 2nd registration links. And the next chunk will be announced towards middle of June, so that you have the opportunity to register for kind of 4 at a time. And you're welcome to register and then adjust that if needed. I know that it's hard to know that far in advance, but they're going to be recorded, and at the end of the 10-week series, they'll be posted to the website. Are you getting questions or no? Okay, there's more questions coming in. I bet you need to be made an organizer.
All right.
And then
Well, we've got more questions coming in.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
All
I can
right.
see them now.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. Do we anticipate monitoring for the Housing Finance Corporation program? I cannot answer that question. I do not sit on any in the Senate or the House of the Texas legislative. And so I have no idea if we will or if we will not. Are there bills out there currently being heard that say we will? Yes. What will happen with them? I do not know. So your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah.
PFC reg only mentions including income from assets. Am I correct to assume the verification of assets should follow new HOTMA? Yes. Income from assets is verification of assets.
Mhm.
So I think people get confused by that. Even though your asset may not produce income, you still need to verify that asset under a HOTMA to make sure that it is or is not producing income. So yes, that is a requirement there. Okay. Answer that one. And then, are we getting certifications for taking the Lunch and Learn?
No.
Kara?
There will not be certificates for Lunch and Learn. It is an informal, broken out chunk of income determination, and we have discussed it internally and determined that only the full, big class should be the one that gets their certificate. So it'll be similar to these. You'll get the announcement, you'll get the email that says thank you for attending, but there won't be a certificate.
Yes, I did say that the TAA Affordable Housing Addendum does not, well, I said I wasn't sure if it did. I didn't think it had everything in there, but Christina has confirmed, and she's looked at enough of these leases and lease addendums to find these requirements. And so I trust her on this one, that the TAA lease addendum does not have all of the requirements for PFC. But I feel like they added something to it. But I could look again just to confirm. And
We could probably get stuff added if we needed to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully before, and we work really, really closely with TAA.
Yeah, we like
So you know what? I will add that to my to-do list
that'd be
to
nice to have it.
review the PFC lease requirement rule and reach out to TAA and read through TAA's fully, because there's certain things on that addendum that I am just programmed to look at. So to be perfectly honest, have I read it word for word, cover to beginning to end? No, I look for good cause, lockout, student, blah, blah, and I say it's there, done. So just to be honest, as an auditor, I've just gotten to the place where it's like autopilot for me, where I know that it's there. I've worked with DAA to put it there. So for the other programs, I'm very aware of that, but I will double check it. And we do work really closely with TAA, so maybe we can get them to make any modification that we see. So as of right now, if you guys see something in there that feels like it does comply, feel free to send that over to Christina, myself, Wendy, and Shay, and we'll take a look at it. And if we all agree that yes, it is meeting the PFC requirements, we'll be happy to reverse our decision that we're making here today. I just don't have it in front of me right now to say, absolutely, here's where it says this, which is in the rule, here's where it says that, which is in the rule, here's where it says that, which is in the rule. So definitely, if you see something different, we're open to taking a deeper dive into looking at that addendum or working with TAA on that. So let's see, we got a couple other questions here. The TAA affordable addendum prompted my insurance question, so thank you. You're welcome. Let's see, what else do we have? What can we do if our application does not ask about assets? We do have a resident sign our Exhibit D verification of income and SRA, but that is after the app process. So you are probably talking about a pre-2023 because you're saying Exhibit D, which makes me believe that you're pre-2023. And I think, Tamika, we've already established that you might be pre-2023 or earlier in our questions and answers conversations. You would want to make sure you do include some type of application that does screen for assets. You can use our application for our other multifamily programs. It is fine to use that because it does screen. You can use the TAA supplemental rental application that does screen for income and assets, but I would highly recommend that you begin screening for assets because you want to include them in your calculation of eligibility.
Yes.
All right, I am cleared on my questions.
Clear on
I'm
questions.
just confirming that you guys are too, just because we were.
I think so. Okay.
Also, just an announcement, TAA has put our forms on their Blue Moon. So we've been working with them on that. I think it's done. I think it's out there now.
I think so, but they're all at their conference right now, so I can't ask them.
Yeah.
No,
So yeah, they are at their conference.
Their conference, yeah.
We had some people that were popping on here for a little bit too, and then they were going to pop off because they're at the conference.
Yeah.
Yeah, so our open forum might be a little smaller.
Be a little light today. But the good news is we've got 30-ish people already registered for Lunch and Learn for the first 4 sessions.
All right,
great.
there, the
Yeah.
PFC meeting.
10 minutes later. You guys are going to keep me busy this summer.
Oh, yeah.
We've got about 5 more minutes that we can answer PFC specific questions. And then what we do is we usually take about a 5-minute break. So the 3 of us can take a little bathroom break. You guys can take a little bathroom break as well. And then, or log off if you are done with us. And then at about 10:35, we come back and we do open forum where we are going to just answer any questions. You can continue to ask PFC questions, but we're also going to have other people join us. So you might hear some Section 811 questions, some physical inspection questions, some multifamily questions, some multifamily direct loan questions, Any question that anybody has for TDHCA, we have some fair housing questions. We will try to answer them to the best of our knowledge. And if we don't know, if it belongs to another division, we'll let you know who to contact, or we will get your email information and we will reach out to the person at the department that would be best to help you and get an answer to your question. We want to try to answer all the questions out there.
If you are leaving us now, you will be prompted to complete a survey. We appreciate any and all feedback. I will share PFC questions with the PFC group, and I will answer any others. If you have suggestions or comments about how today's format was, please provide those. I do use those when I am thinking about future offerings and future training opportunities. So please feel free to fill out that survey and give us any information you'd like to share. Know that somebody will reach back out to you if you leave a question or a comment that warrants a response. But otherwise, appreciate you joining us. The recording will stop in about 5 minutes, or now if there's no questions.
There is a question that came in. Christina, do assets need to be disclosed and verified on both pre and post?
Yes. Short answer.
Yes.
Yes.
So again, verifications may differ per
You're right.
regulatory agreements,
Mhm.
but all calculations of eligibility would be the same as any other affordable housing program for both pre and post. There are really some small differences, like I mentioned, and unless you can think of any, Laura, that you've seen that says don't include assets, but
No.
I haven't seen any.
Not yet.
But we have seen them that says, you have to have 4 pay stubs, or you have to
Yes.
have a tax return. Very
Yeah.
specific
Yeah.
verification.
I've seen some that don't allow third-party verification. Like I've
So it's
seen a
very,
lot of
very
different things.
verification
Yeah.
specific, not so much the calculation.
Yeah, calculation is really straightforward. Verifying can get a little different. Let's 10:27. Couple more minutes. Let's see if there are any other questions through.
All right. Okay. No questions. You want to go ahead and break now, and we'll be back at 10:35.
Perfect. I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you, guys. This will be posted within about a week. We'll see you guys again soon.
Thank you, Christina.
Yay!